Welcome to the Election University podcast, a weekly show where we hear from industry experts who share tips and tricks for winning campaigns. Whether you're running for office now, thinking about it for the future, or just want to know more about campaigns and elections, Election University is for you. With Election University, click, learn, win. And now your host, Jason Bennett and Rainey Cohen.
Hello.
Hi, Jason. You're back.
I am back. Back from Las Vegas, where I went to DEF CON 26, the world's oldest and largest hacker conference in Las Vegas.
Sounds nerdy.
It was pretty nerdy.
I'm kind of jealous.
It was super cool. And you definitely have to go with me next year if they're going to do another election voting village, because it was super interesting. And I got to meet several very fascinating folks who specialize and are experts in the fields of hacking and voter protection and privacy. It was fascinating.
What was your favorite thing?
Well, my favorite thing was watching children under 17 years of age hack into the Secretary of State's websites. That was
so scary.
Scary and very eye-opening. But I will say this. There was one panel discussion where they had the Secretary of State, Secretary Padilla from California, and elections directors from across the country. So they had Denver County's election director, they had Orange County, and I'm forgetting Cook County. They had, just a panel discussion of fantastic folks who really care about this work and are taking the lessons learned from 2016 and really applying them to try to, keep the integrity of our voting system high and making sure that any issues around cybersecurity and privacy are addressed. They take it very seriously. Not everyone in the country is, and that is discouraging, and we have to remain ever vigilant to try to get folks to do it. But hearing from folks who are really taking this seriously and are on the front lines, making sure that our voting systems are secured and we have faith in our, high faith in our system, they're heroes. So I was really excited to hear from them and have some of that faith restored.
It's really great that some of that work is happening. And I certainly, when you said that you were going to this conference, I certainly had no idea we were going to have like 4 podcasts come out of it. And so I'm really excited. One, super jealous that you got to go, but very excited that these folks agreed to talk to us after the fact and that we have the opportunity to keep the whole thing going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the moral of this is, one of the dramas, and we're going to be speaking with one of the organizers around the voting village. He is one of the main organizers from last year's conference, where they actually brought in the voting machines that are used in many polling locations across the country. Those optical scan, not optical scan, the touch screens. The optical scanners are more secure. The touch screen voting machines that were implemented after Bush v. Gore and the Help America Voting Act of 2002 purchased, several of these machines to deal with the hanging Chad issue for the folks who remember that drama. Those are very insecure systems, and last year they purchased some of those and some other machines that have known vulnerabilities and invited these hackers who come to the conference to hack into the machines. The organizer of that, Jake Braun, is going to be speaking with us. And I'm excited about that because this year had a certain amount of drama when they invited children to come manipulate the Secretary of State's websites. And the National Association of Secretaries of State issued a letter denouncing the effort and saying that these were not websites that are even remotely similar to what they have in their own systems and their own securities. And it's, reducing faith in our electoral system and Putin's hands. I mean, it was just basically a big...
Don't you want to know where where your security holes are?
Right.
And you would think that you would welcome that kind of, free help.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, I figured out how to get into your site. You might want to fix that.
Yeah. So the vendors, the people who provide these electronic voting machines and the secretaries of state had some very strongly worded response to this and rebuttal. And so we'll be talking with Jake about all of that later in the week. So it's very exciting. But first, we are talking with Joshua Franklin, who also spoke at the DEF CON convention. And he really, I'm so excited to chat with him today.
I love his presentation was called Defending the 2018 Midterm Elections from Foreign Adversaries. And this PowerPoint that they provided, which will be in the show notes, is amazing.
It's so good.
And it's also so red, white, and blue and patriotic everywhere. I'm really excited to talk to Josh.
Yeah. So Josh has a lot of experience dealing with the Election Voting Commission and work around identifying vulnerabilities in election voting, generally speaking, but particularly around websites. So he and his dad had developed this program. It's a Python program, which is a coding language, I guess. I'm not super tech savvy when it comes to some of this stuff, but they developed this program that essentially helps identify where these sites are coming from and for example, if Russia purchased them, right? So what they're specifically looking for are squatting sites. So typo squatting, which is something we'll discuss, in the interview a little bit more specifically, and cyber squatting. Mm-hmm. So when you purchase similar domains and typo spellings of various domains and you sit on them and you use them for nefarious purposes, that's what his software helps identify. And he walks us through all the stuff that he has learned through the thousands of sites that he has scanned with his dad. And he does this just recreationally. I mean, he does this to help protect our system. Yeah, in the basement, in his dad's basement, essentially.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm really excited to chat with him about this today.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Joshua Franklin, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
We were very brief in the bio because we wanted you to take a second and tell our listeners a little bit about the work that you do and how you got involved in this work with Election Busters.
Yeah, it's kind of I sort of have a long and checkered past in the voting arena. I got into elections initially in 2004. Working for an organization under the Secretary of State's office in Georgia. I was going to school and helping to basically run. So it's really there at the Center for Election Systems where I got my feet wet and I started to understand how elections actually worked. Once I completed my undergraduate degree, I actually went off to the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, focusing on basically, voting system testing and certification at the federal level. The, Election Assistance Commission is a, fairly small U.S. government independent agency. They do a lot of really cool and nifty things that everyone, in election land should know about. But yeah, they actually help to set the standards that federally certified voting systems meet. And so I was, part of that overall process. And once I finished my, go ahead.
The election assistance was a result of Al Gore versus George Bush, correct? This was part of HAVA. Was that right? It was created after HAVA, the Help America Vote Act.
Yeah. The Election Assistance Commission did come out of the Help America Vote Act of 2002, also known as HAVA. That piece of legislation also, did a number of really interesting things like, set minimum, accessibility requirements for voting systems as well, and basically helped to set up the current structure that modern voting systems have to live within.
That's great. So it's fair to say then that you are not a hobbyist when it comes to this. You're not sitting around just doing this in your free time. This is something that you have spent a number of years studying and looking at and following. Maybe even go so far as to say you might be an expert in this field.
I'm scared to throw around the word expert, but I've definitely been in the game since the mid 2000s. I've been in the actual voting system side of things since around mid 2000, but I've been focusing on campaign security actually as a side project or hobby since around 2012. And I sort of think of them as two very different, activities or, worlds, if you will, because a lot of times the actual voting system side of things doesn't really interact that much with what's going on inside the campaign sphere.
Interesting. All right. That was like a whole set of other questions that just popped into my mind now. But let's get to your talk at DEF CON.
Yeah.
Because I think there's so much great material in here, and I really want to get to the heart of what your discussion was, which was really the tracking of fake websites, essentially. So,
well, because you were at DEF CON, Jason, and I was not, and neither were our listeners. Can we get a quick overview of what the talk was about before we drill into the heart of it?
Definitely. Yeah. So our talk was labeled Defending the 2018 Midterms from Foreign Adversaries.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Sounds like an easy task.
Yeah. I mean, it was it was a continuation of work that we've been doing since 2012, and we were just presenting, an updated tool set and updated results. We were really focusing on, everything we found related to the, 2015 and 2016 attacks on the United States election infrastructure, but also a lot of things that, normal folks might have really missed that we found, on our own, such as malware on election website servers, candidates trying to basically attack each other, maybe typo squat on each other's domains and steal traffic from each other. A lot of it was just sort of online hijinks related to the election.
Wow.
Sounds like shenanigans.
I like it.
Serious shenanigans. Not lighthearted shenanigans, but serious shenanigans. Okay, so let's talk about you put together a 73-page PDF of what you've discovered and what you're trying to warn people about for the 2018 cycle. Can you walk us through it as a summary of what you put together? Yeah,
I would say that we did two main things. The first thing was to look for various typo squats like for campaigns and basically election websites.
And can you tell us what a typo squat is?
Yeah. Great question. So a typo squat is when someone has registered a website name that is very, very close to another person's website name with the intention of stealing traffic from that individual. So if someone put a N in place of an M, then some folks might accidentally go to the website with the N, and it might look the same in links and stuff like that.
I see.
Like Hillary Clinton with one L, for example.
And it would look just like her website, so you think that you are on the right one.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Got
it. It's a pretty devious way of purporting to be who you're not.
Yeah. And so what is the terminology when I don't do necessarily a typo version of that, but I take another person's like .net, .org version of their own website?
Yes, cyber squatting is sort of the overarching term that I think of. So for instance, we saw that in 2012. No one owned democraticnationalcommittee.org.
Oh,
no one owned that domain. Exactly. And so someone put up a fake DNC page on there that looked fairly real. And they started taking donations on behalf of the DNC. And they set up a similar page for the RNC, and both pages were hosted on a server in Oregon. and seemed to be operating for a good amount of time. We ended up contacting the authorities way back when and getting those pages taken down.
Okay. Wow.
So you found those pages.
Yep.
Okay. So typo squatting happens in 2016. I mean, probably happens prior to 2016, but you notice a flourish of it in 2016. Is that what you're saying? There's an dramatic increase in this?
I would actually say that we just, that we saw the same types of strategies at about the same scale. It's just that it stopped being citizens typo squatting on various candidates, and it stopped being candidates typo squatting on each other. And we actually got malicious foreign adversaries into the mix. For instance, in our talk, we showed that we found a fake Act Blues website, which was the primary campaign fundraising widget that Democrats could embed into their website. The actual foreign adversaries were typo squatting on actblues.com, and we saw it back in 2016, but didn't think it was anything odd. We thought it was just Act Blue purchasing an extra domain to defend themselves. And it ended up being, one of the, larger failures of our overall efforts, that although we saw it, we didn't actually recognize that this was something malicious.
Wow.
And attribution on the internet is very, very difficult. So that trend continues.
Wow. Okay. So I see this as sort of three different categories, generally speaking, right? So you've got campaigns who defend themselves and buy various domain names just because they don't want their opposition or bad actors to buy them. You have your opposition who's buying these just to have shenanigans. So like a fake Marco Rubio site that's purchased by Ted Cruz's campaign to, do the truth about Marco Rubio, something along those lines, right? The campaign shenanigans kind of thing. And then you've got bad actors, foreign hostile powers that are buying this stuff to really disrupt or discredit our electoral system. Is that how you're breaking this out?
I love it. I think that is an absolutely wonderful way of, bucketing all those ideas. Yeah.
Well, thank you very
much. Good job, Jason.
Well, it helps to have the PDF that you put together right in front of me too.
Totally.
Okay. So, talk to us a little bit more about, Election Buster and what it does.
Definitely. So Election Buster is a program that my father and I wrote circa 2014, 2013. We actually saw, that there was all these typo squatting and cyber squatting issues going on, and how we were initially finding them was hunting and pecking, inputting Romney with a 0, for instance, instead of an O. That's really, really time consuming. You want to slam your head against the keyboard. So we said, can we automate this? Can we, do this faster, better, stronger? And so we wrote this Python program that basically tries all the variations that you can possibly have inside of the English language. And so it puts one character to the left of every character and tries every possible permutation. It then puts one character in place of the main character that you're worried about. So if it's Romney.com, it takes that R and tries A through Z and 0 through 9 inside of that place. And then it puts one character to the right of Romney, of the R in Romney. And then it tries com, biz, org, US, what have you, vote even. And then we have a bunch of templates that we've created as well, which we sort of consider our special sauce, where we have frequency distributions on the most common ways that campaigns create or name their websites. So you can think of Josh Franklin 2018, or Josh Franklin for, Georgia, or Friends of Josh Franklin. And you can imagine all those crazy permutations there. And so we have a whole bunch of templates, and we try all of those as well, to make sure that we're sort of catching some of these one-offs. Another interesting one was like Mitch McConnell. His was Team Mitch. That was the name of his website. And so now we try Team Candidate First Name in order to find some of these sites.
Yeah.
And that's at like a high level how we find these. We then get lots of data, lots of websites get pumped out of the tool. We then have to go through them and figure out which ones are which ones make sense, which ones are we worried about. We have a whole bunch of extra tools to help us do that we've been building since 2014. So
is this like operations that you run on every candidate running for office, or are candidates contacting you to ask to use the tool?
We've been doing this on our own, running out of infrastructure in my father's basement, since around 2014. We've been primarily focused on federal races, and so for House, Senate, and then president. We've gone to the lower levels into governor's office as well. Gubernatorial races, to be proper.
Yes.
We've only worked with a couple individual candidates. That's now changing now that we've sort of got some of the spotlight here. Via the DEF CON presentation, we've been contacted by some candidates. We're definitely open to helping everyone. We want to make sure that we're doing our duty to, keep everyone safe out there.
So if I am a down ballot candidate running for city council or something in a medium-sized town, how worried should I be that this is happening to my website? Is it something that you see only happening at those higher levels, or is like everyone equally at risk?
Yeah, I don't want to, overblow the threat there. The risk. So we have seen it happen in down ballot races. For instance, we may look for, Franklin for House 2018. And that might be someone running for, the House of Representatives, but that might also be someone running for, state office as well. And so we have, incidentally seen these sorts of things happen at the lower level. Honestly, if you are worried about it, getting those domains to help protect you is fairly cheap. Generally, we're talking under $100 to basically purchase anywhere from 8 to 12 domains that that'll help you be secure.
So if I gave you a domain name, let's say I'm running for governor of Washington, God forbid. Let's say I'm doing it, and I give you jasonbennett.oregon.com to scan. How long does it take you to scan and find all the various permutations that might have either these cyber squats or typo squats or redirects on them?
Yeah, so when I first wrote Election Buster, it would take about an hour.
Per domain?
It would take a long time. Yeah. Oh, no, so actually the way Election Buster works is that you basically give it first name, last name, middle name if you're sort of running with that. So Donald J. Trump, you would need to put in J there because he oftentimes uses that middle that middle initial.
Right.
And so first name, last name, middle name, possibly year of election that you're concerned about, type of office that you're running for, and then what state or city you are basically running in. And there's some intelligence there to basically, if you write gubernatorial, it'll try governor. It'll also try gov,
Right.
Yeah.
And it'll take all that information nowadays, and it'll spit that out in probably 5 minutes.
Wow.
Under that. Yeah. It's a fast process.
Wow. That's pretty great. Okay. So this is not available to the public. This is something that you have control over, you and your dad have control over. So like this isn't released as a extension on Chrome or anything like that.
Yeah, this is a open source Python program. We have the MIT license associated with it, so folks can remix, they can mess with it. We just need some attribution. Basically, if you're gonna take it and use it for commercial use, there's some small restrictions there. Don't want to get into all that, but if you're a candidate, you can take it and use it on yourself in under 15 minutes. Most systems nowadays come with Python installed. If you've never used Python before, it might be sort of a challenge, but if candidates want to get in contact with us, we would love to help you out. So it's just at the Josh Pitt is my Twitter handle. At the Josh Pitt. Yeah, I know. We just want candidates to use our stuff and folks to be, safe out there, defend themselves from cyberspace.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I have, there are all these various campaign website providers like Nation Builder and such, and why they wouldn't take something like this and incorporate it like by your system, right? And incorporate it into their platform so that when you're buying domains and uploading websites and doing, the front face of their websites, that this isn't built in to sort of trigger them to like, hey, candidate who doesn't have a lot of tech experience, you should buy all of your extensions at once. First and foremost, that's like rule number one. Don't just buy the .com, but buy all of them.
Is that that's a regular thing that candidates should practice, right? Just buy them all?
Yeah. And I don't think they do is when you're talking about down ballot races, I think they're buying .com and .org generally, maybe not even both. And they certainly aren't buying variations of their names. You'll see a lot of candidates who will do like JSON 4 gov, and then they'll do the variation JSON number 4 gov. I've seen that, but I don't see that they're buying lots of variations of them.
It seems pretty inexpensive to just protect yourself and go ahead and buy all of those, right?
But it also seems like on the back end, these organizations or these businesses, these vendors that are providing website services should have some sort of extra search criteria on it as well. Like this seems like such a great thing to cook into a Nation Builder or an NGP, or, we're talking about the Democratic vendors because we're not too aware of the Republican ones out there, but I'm assuming on both ends, they could use a tool like this to help find all the various sites and then see if anybody else has purchased them.
Yeah. I mean, so we think, that we give a list of website templates that candidates should purchase. Those templates are not generally focused on typos. They're more focused on just like defensively purchasing that 4gov domain you just mentioned, and we recommend folks use Election Buster to find those malicious typos out there, so they can contact the authorities or work to get those pages taken down that are basically doing unscrupulous activities.
Yeah, that was my next question. What is the process? Like, if I'm a candidate and I run through Election Buster and I find that there's 17 variations that aren't me, what do I do?
It's hard. There's not a clearly defined process. So
I said that's a bummer.
Yeah. So there is an Anti-Cyber Squatting Act of 1999, which is kind of impressive that it's that early. But that basically makes using a domain in bad faith illegal. And so there is recourse, but you typically have to work with the FBI and get a lawyer. And so it is a little bit difficult. So even then, you can't just work with a normal lawyer. Typically, you have to you have to work with a lawyer who has this sort of deep cybersecurity experience. And so it makes it a very uphill battle for a small candidate.
Yeah, it sounds like a really expensive process. Like hiring a lawyer with that expertise can't be cheap.
I wouldn't think so. It's definitely an uphill process. I've never gotten basically information from candidates who have gone through the process on basically how much time and money it costs them. And that's one of the big issues here, is that it is a little bit difficult, especially if you get someone who actually is, doing something really malicious, to actually do something about it. We saw a state candidate named Linda Coleman in North Carolina. She had one of her old websites bought by a Russian national. They actually purchased her old campaign website when she was running for lieutenant governor. And they were using it to sell pharmaceuticals for some weird reason. Yeah, it looked like her real website, but you would click donate and you'd be taken to a pharmaceutical storefront. The actual website was taken down eventually, but it was up for about a month, I would say, before it actually went down. I never been able to get any information on how she did that.
So I guess the challenge is, even if you lose your race or retire, your domain names still can be used for nefarious purposes. You are not off the hook. Once you lose your race or you retire from office, you're kind of tied to that brand for forever.
A little while. How about forever, but definitely for a little while. We noticed that Carly Fiorina's website from like 2000 is still up. I think it was carlyforca.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's still up. And that's fairly normal, frankly. We definitely see that a lot. I would definitely recommend folks take down their campaign website, once their campaign has ended, whether, positively or negatively. Oftentimes incumbents for office basically get given a special place on their jurisdiction's website, and so you can always just have it forward to your special incumbent website. But you want to make sure that you are keeping those domains. Make sure that you're using who is privacy, and
using
that
what
sort of thing. There's a public database called the Who Is database.
Oh.
Yeah, every time you basically register a website, you're supposed to put information into this database to let people know who owns that domain. And it was like it's sort of a relic of, the before time, before we had the internet as we do now. And what we found is that candidates oftentimes put their real home address into this, into this Who Is database. And there are crazy people out there. There are fanatics out there, and exposing your home address like that can be a fairly dangerous thing. And then if you're just from a privacy perspective, you probably don't want to put your address out there on the internet. But we found a number of high-profile candidates that had their their, their McMansions
Oh my
in the
God.
in the Whois database. Yeah.
Seems like a P.O. box is common sense in this
no doubt.
scenario.
Yeah, you can often just pay $2 and you have something called Whois Privacy. And it's something that the company that you're registering your website with can do for you.
Does that make the tracking?
You never have to think about.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Josh. Does that make the tracking of who owns the site? Like if you're trying to hunt down if this is owned by Russian nationalists, if these are, does that make it more difficult if you have the private, or is there another back end way that you can find out who the owner is of a particular site?
It makes it extremely difficult. And that's why, for instance, when we found that Act Blues, squatting page that I meant that I talked about earlier, that's one of the barriers to finding out who actually owned that website. Everyone today just typically uses Whois Privacy for the most part. So the way you have to, the way to get any further information there is to either, go another way, do some completely unrelated tracking method, or you have to get inside relationships to the domain registrars and get access to their internal databases. There are, illegal ways of doing that, basically hacking them. We don't want to do that. Or you can sort of use like a Veronica Mars, Jessica Jones method where you know a guy who knows a guy who has a company, who has special relationships with these individuals, and they can get that information for you. And they're definitely out there. They're just expensive.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's
fascinating.
There's like so many rabbit holes to go into in this. It's like insane. That Carly Fiorina site, I actually think it was for U.S. Senate, wasn't it, against Barbara Boxer or something like that? I can't remember. Anyway, that site, did you say that was a typo squat, or was it a redirect to another pharmaceutical company? What was the thing there that you noticed? It was an old site that had been purchased by somebody else?
Oh, we were just, with that one, we were just trying to point out to other candidates that they should take down their old website.
Got it.
Just because they don't age well. I don't need to see your, GeoCities era website. It sort of, it basically, exposes your web presence to like defacement, for instance. Someone might hack into your website and say nasty things about you on a website that you own.
Yeah.
Right?
So you've gone through all of the congressional websites for the 2018 midterms. What did you discover? Like, how is the security for these websites? What do you see on the horizon for 2018?
Well, I mean, so we haven't gone through all of them, unfortunately. We went through most of them. It's just there are a couple thousand people running for House, especially if you include primaries. And so we tried to get large lists together, but there's only so many hours I have to copy and paste names and parties from Ballotpedia to an Excel spreadsheet. So we made sure to get, like an overwhelming majority. But what we found is that oftentimes, candidates aren't using some of the minimum web security protections that are out there. So things like TLS or SSL, which are the building blocks of HTTPS, which is the, protocol that is really protecting all of us whenever we make a purchase online. There's a big movement today to have HTTPS everywhere. And, there's probably about 30% of the, candidates that we surveyed had some sort of TLS or web security issue. But we also saw an interesting trend that we weren't expecting. And that's that a lot of the smaller candidates are actually starting to use Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and Instagram as their primary method for contacting their constituents or their potential voters. And that was really interesting. We weren't expecting to see that. And, those sites are going to be professionally managed. And it might be a good way for interacting with voters in the near future. And it costs a magical number, free. So we're definitely expecting, campaigns that are really going to focus on those sorts of, outreach methods to sort of expand and, probably keep with that as time moves on.
Do you think that a Facebook page that has a donate, page embedded in it, which is essentially the way you would do something like that on Facebook, is to have some sort of iframe or some way to embed a donate page on your Facebook page, is more secure than a WordPress site that has an SSL certificate? Is that what you would say is more secure? With $0 to add towards the cybersecurity team, I would say yes. Yeah.
Yeah. By default, Facebook's going to do a pretty decent job managing its web security. They have a large cybersecurity team. I'm not saying that someone who owns their own website and uses something like WordPress can't be secure, just that it costs more money and resources to make it so.
Right. Okay.
It's interesting.
I know.
I don't think of Facebook as being the most secure place at the moment. So.
I know. To kind of suspend some disbelief on that one.
Yeah.
Well, it's just that, Facebook is going to keep its underlying infrastructure more secure.
Right. And that makes sense when, you think about it that way.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
It's just surprising.
Since I blame them for the 2016 election.
Yeah, I understand that. And that's a whole different problem. And we didn't focus on that problem. That's not what we were trying to work on. That's just a different area of expertise than we have.
Let's talk about Secretary of State's websites and election directors. That was a big focus of the Voting Village this year at DEF CON, and you've done some work studying the security of these sites, and definitely want to talk about American Samoa and the stuff that you discovered there.
Yeah. So we were looking at all these campaign websites, and we're, getting a list of a couple thousand together, and we're like, what's 50 more, right? And so we decided to look at the, state election websites as well. We ended up, going a little bit deeper than just that, and we ended up having two separate buckets of state websites. One was the voter registration system. And so, that's going to be the main online portal for, voters to sign up to vote, check the registration status, and edit the registration information. And then there were also just your typical election websites telling you where to go vote, how to go vote, giving you election results, that sort of thing. And so those are the, two main buckets. The election websites have been around for a long time, right? Folks, states have had websites that are owned and operated by them probably since the mid-90s. And so a lot of these didn't age well. Although there may be a cybersecurity team dedicated to keeping them up and running, we probably saw that about 20% of the state election websites had some sort of cybersecurity issue. Many of them had a more serious cybersecurity issue. They had known vulnerabilities inside of them. They, were basically using older, cryptographic algorithms and really small key sizes to go along with those cryptographic algorithms. And so they really could use some cybersecurity TLC. when we were looking at the voter registration systems, we really only found 3 that had any serious issue. And we contacted the states that had those issues, and we made them aware of it. Yeah, it took about a month, maybe a little more, to get those issues fixed. But we were eventually able to get those issues fixed. And it's like, it's interesting. Like, not every day you get like numbers where you can say, I helped secure the election this much,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really dope. And so we get to say, we fixed holes in 3 different voter registration systems. And that's really cool. We feel really great about that. The state election websites are a little bit different. They're, some of them, most of them still have the issues that we identified, and we're trying to get those solved, but it's going to take time.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing that I think is a little frustrating, as somebody who has done a couple of episodes on this, is that you have this decentralized election process in the United States, right? Where we have local, county, and states that administer elections, which is good because as a whole, it's very difficult to manipulate an entire election countrywide. But you also at the same time have varying degrees of priority from these elections offices on how to fix some of these things. So the patches that they could be applying to these very simple, sometimes free upgrades and patches that are available to them to close some of these security holes, they're just simply refusing to do, or dragging their feet. This isn't even just a matter of resources, it's a matter of will on some of them. Are you experiencing that when you contact them, that is the additional combat on this? Not only are you identifying the holes, but there's just like a lack of will or desire, or a, lack of seriousness or priority that they're giving this issue?
Oh, that's a deep question.
And if you could be brief in your answer. Just kidding. If you could just give me a quick soundbite on that.
Sure.
I'm just kidding.
No. So all the election officials that we contacted obviously had election cybersecurity at the top of their pile. It's what they were really worried about. But we were also 2 random guys with Gmail accounts reaching out to them that they didn't necessarily know. And so that definitely made getting these things fixed a little more difficult. I had states verifying who I was via Twitter and sending me messages on Twitter, like, hey, this is Pennsylvania. Is this actually Josh? Did you send this email? And I'm like, yeah, dude, totally me. Fix that. But what we've really found, which I didn't realize, I guess I knew this, and I guess we all know this, but states are large organizations. They're a large bureaucracy, but there are actually multiple bureaucracies inside of each of these states. And so what you're having to do is get multiple, bureaucracies that don't necessarily like each other, that may have all their own internal politics and history. They have to work together. And that has been sort of a big issue for us. Sometimes, if there's Pennsylvania.gov, but the elections website is SOS for Secretary of State. It's sos.pennsylvania.gov. We have to get the team that independently manages Pennsylvania.gov to work with the SOS folks.
Right.
And sometimes they just don't want to. There's just some other barriers. They both might have their own third-party contractors who may all have additional contractors as well. We were not prepared to step into that, and we got a little frustrated with that. But we're trying to stick with it, get this stuff fixed. All the media attention around our presentation at DEF CON has helped to allay some of those fears and suspicions that were people trying to fish them or trick them into doing something bad. And so slowly but surely, we're going to get these, like darn holes plugged.
That's awesome.
Gonna happen.
So, I would like to know, if you are okay with us posting your PDF of the presentation in our show notes, are you okay with that? Is that public information? Or do you have a public document that we could?
Definitely. No. Let me reach out and give you a slightly longer version.
Sure.
You'll see there's a lot of stuff in the appendix. We want to take all the stuff in the appendix and put it in the right order.
Oh, okay.
We basically made our perfect presentation and then said this is too long, and so we just threw a lot of stuff into the appendix until it was 45 minutes.
Oh, gotcha.
So let me give you the longer version for your audience. They might, if they're election geeks, they might like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure. We definitely have listeners that pore over every
materials
and in everything that we post. So, and then for your top 5 recommendations, you have a lot of recommendations that you offered at the talk at DEF CON. But if campaigns, particularly down ballot campaigns that are really resource limited, what would be the 5 things that you would recommend that they do, not only just to raise awareness on this, but to protect themselves?
Wow. I would say first and foremost, to turn on 2-factor authentication for all of your personal and campaign information systems. So that includes your phone, that includes, the login to your Twitter, to any of your campaign websites, all of your infrastructure. If it has 2-factor, turn on 2-factor. And if it doesn't have 2-factor, consider getting a different service. That is just first and foremost, just something that's like an easy thing that folks can do to really respond to the real threats that are out there that we've seen, and just to keep their, overall cyber hygiene elevated, is what folks often call it. Another one I would say is purchase common election domain. We have a list in our presentation, which is available at pleasego.vote. That's the website. So you can, look at those templates and purchase those domains. If you're, gonna set up a website, then make sure you choose a secure hosting provider. I'm not trying to, give out any kudos to anyone, but someone like Squarespace can offer you like a really high quality web design, abilities, and they're just kind of going to be secure by default. They're going to take a lot of the mess of configuring your website out of the picture, and it's just going to be good. There's tons of other folks like name.com that can help do that. Wix is another one. You might have to pay a little bit of money, but you get what you pay for. Another one is to use Election Buster. Help find any of those fake campaign websites. If you're running it and you're a Republican, run it on your opponent as well. It's a easy way to help keep everyone safe, and basically keep external entities outside of mucking with our elections. We want to we want to keep things safe out there. And then I would say look to some external guidance for some best practice. The Belfer Center has the Defending Digital Democracy project out there, D3, and they're going to have lots of dedicated, smart cybersecurity folks who are going to have really nice resumes and fancy, titles, and they're going to be able to help you with all the nitty-gritty stuff with, running a secure campaign.
Is that a free resource?
It is a free resource. Yes, sir.
All right.
Good to know. All right, one more. You're on 4. We got one more recommendation.
Oh my goodness. Go vote.
I love
yes,
that.
Please vote.
I also like that you plugged your own tool third.
I don't know.
It's great.
That's awesome. So as a final wrap up, can you remind folks where they can contact you if they have any follow-up questions, the domain name of where you have the extension templates, and any other resource information where they can find out more?
Yeah. So I am on Twitter with my with my DMs open at the Josh Pitt. So TheJoshPit. I'm also available at josh.michael.franklin@gmail.com. Get in contact with us. We want to help folks. We're not really super into making money. We want to make things better. So
that's awesome.
Great
conversation, Joshua Franklin. Thank you so much for your time today. This was so much good information.
Awesome.
And thanks for having me, man.
And thanks for
your Twitter profile picture is amazing. I'm following you now. Everyone go check it out.
Yeah. Thanks for the nightmares, Josh. We really appreciate all the nightmares that you just gave all of our listeners. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Another big thank you to Joshua Franklin of Election Buster. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Wow.
So much information.
So fascinating. I feel like I could talk to Josh for hours about this.
We could do a 7-part series on this, I think, and barely scratch the surface of the stuff that he's uncovered. So good. Also very scary. The tentacles that sort of reach out from this stuff, and how Russia in particular has been able to really permeate into all aspects of disruption in our elections, and how we weren't better prepared for it, I think is still a head scratching moment for me. I just don't kind of get how we're playing all this catch up, you know? I just don't understand. I
think it's really interesting that like the number one thing that you need to know running for office is or I guess creating a website of any kind is buy literally anything that is close to the name of your website, just to protect yourself from, we used to think that we were protecting ourselves just from opposition, right? And now it's literally foreign invasion.
Right. Yeah. And it's not necessarily, that you're a target for serious disruption, as we discovered, with the woman who ran for office in North Carolina. They're purchasing this to put up pharmaceutical websites and redirect to, satire sites. And so I guess the key to this is, spend the extra $100 to buy the various domains and be smart about your security, turn on your 2-factor and do the other recommendations that Josh had recommended.
Because it's not that Russia does care about your small city council race in rural Oregon or something, right? It's just that there are vulnerabilities and they will use whatever they can to, hijack your stuff.
Yeah. And I think, the concept at DEF CON in particular, there were several speakers that went out of their way to talk about this. Like, I have nothing to hide. So if you want to hack me, hack away.
Right.
And they debunk it by basically saying, okay, you may not feel like you have anything now, but you may in the future. And more importantly, you're providing access to people, through your contacts list, through your associations with other people who may not necessarily want their entire lives broadcast. So even though you think that you're sort of off the radar in this small remote place, the chances of you being connected to somebody who might not be are pretty high. So protect yourself and protect the people you care about. Don't make us say it again.
Don't make us tell you again.
Yeah. So
also, for reals, follow Josh on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
He's got a great Twitter. We'll include all that information in the show notes. And listeners, we would love to hear from you. What do you think about the topics that we're covering? And we'd love to hear more suggestions and see your feedback on the comments threads on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, however you're listening to us. We really appreciate those ratings and we love the reviews. If you have a direct email that you want to send to us, podcast@electionu.com.
Sweet.
Yeah.
It covers it.
Thanks again to our listeners. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, I'm Jason Bennett.
And I'm Rainey Cohen.
Thanks and have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. This week's episode has ended, but the campaign fun doesn't have to. Head on over to www.electionu.com, where you can access all of the links mentioned in today's episode, as well as the show notes. There you can also sign up for regular announcements or register for our campaign school. It's your very own online personal trainer for winning campaigns. www.electionu.com. Click, learn, win.